Hi everyone, welcome to LIS 570, Research, Assessment, and Design. In this introductory lecture, I'm going to go over some of the policies that govern our course. I'm going to walk you through the syllabus, and then I'll briefly introduce some of the topics that we're going to discuss on a week-to-week basis. So let's start first with where our content lives and what this content is going to be made up of. So as you've probably noticed, this is an asynchronous class, meaning there's going to be no live lectures that I give in front of you. Unfortunately, we can't all be together, but we're going to make our best effort by taking an approach to remote learning for the quarter. I can guarantee you I'm as disappointed as all of you. One of the things that I really love about my job is getting to interact with people on a weekly or daily basis in the classroom. So what we're going to do is have a series of lectures that I record and some notes that I record about those lectures. They will be posted to a site which you can access. We will have readings on a weekly basis, and those readings will reinforce things that are described in the lecture and give you a bit more depth on the concept that we're talking about. For each of the readings that we have on a weekly basis, I will provide some suggested readings and some required readings. In addition to these two, we also have an LIS spotlight where I'm going to try to pick out an interesting contemporary piece of LIS scholarship that can give you an idea of the types of applications of concepts that we're talking about on a week-to-week basis. So in addition to the lectures that we have recorded on a weekly basis and the content that I just described in terms of reading and notes, we will also have a weekly discussion section with each of the sections. So if you're in section A, you'll meet Mondays at 8:30 a.m. with me and Claire. And if you are in section B, you will meet Tuesdays at 10:30 a.m. with me and Wan Chen. The links to the Zoom room where we will have our discussion sections are in the syllabus, which I'll show you in just a second. The one thing that I want to note is that these are completely optional. We're all dealing with a number of different hectic schedules, probably caretaking responsibilities. So these will be recorded. Your attendance will not be counted. If you want to catch up, we'll post the recordings on a weekly basis, and you can access them at any time. I realize that this is the first quarter for most of you at the information school, so I'm going to give you a little tour of the way that this course works because it's set up just a little bit different than the other courses you're probably taking concurrently. So our course has two spaces where we have content and where you'll be responsible for accessing different portions of the class. I'll explain why in just a second, but let me note first that our Canvas site, whether you're in section A or section B, looks something like this. We have the information about the course, we have a Zoom link to your discussion section, which I note is optional, and then you have links to different modules. The modules are essentially what we're talking about on a week-to-week basis. Those links will take you to an external site. So this is our class site where I build all of the content, I post the readings, I describe some optional exercises that you can do on a week-to-week basis, and I also post our videos of lectures. I do this because I find Canvas to be a really hard medium to work in. It is a content management system which is set up to do a lot of really great things. One of them I don't think is easy editing and control by professors. So what I'm creating then is kind of two parallel sites. Everything here should be cross-linked. So anything that you see, for example, in Canvas is cross-linked to the page that exists on our site. For most of the time, you will not ever really notice when you're navigating back and forth. Where this does matter, though, is that there's two important things that you have to remember to be able to do in Canvas. One is to turn assignments in. So the assignments are described in depth in our course site. We'll talk about those in just a second. But where you actually turn them in is in your Canvas site. And I'll talk about this more as we get closer to our first assignment being done. The other thing that's really important that Canvas provides us access to are discussion forums. So you will notice here, I'm going to navigate to our discussion forums, that we've started a bunch already. One of the first things that you can do is introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. And I made this request that you take this little quiz as soon as you introduce yourself. And we're going to use this in the second week of class when we talk about the concept of ontologies. All right, so the discussion sections are where you can interact with your peers, you can ask questions or make any comments about class content. If there's a broken link or if you're confused by assignment instructions, this is the place to do it. It's also a place that in your first assignment, we'll talk about this in just another second, you can find group mates and you can discuss the topic that you'd like to work on for that assignment. So jumping back into our course site, we see that this has all of the same information as Canvas. It's just laid out, in my opinion, a little bit more accessibly and a little bit prettier. So we have things like our lectures, which I described when they'll be posted, our class discussion sections, and office hours. Note that you will have office hours with your TAs. They're not required. They are optional times in which you can consult them based on either course content or any practical questions that you have about the class. The way that I think about asking questions and using office hours and using discussion forums to ask questions and using me, your professor, to ask questions is like this. If it's a general question that you think everyone would benefit from hearing the answer to, go ahead and post that on a discussion forum in Canvas. Ask maybe, when will the readings be posted for week 7? And we'll tell you we're on it. Sorry about not doing that. We'll get it to you as quick as possible. If it's something that's more personal, like you want a reading recommendation, or you're maybe confused about what the difference is between epistemology and ontology, go talk to Claire and Wanchen, because 1, they're experts in this content, and 2, they have time that's set aside to interact with you and try to clarify conceptual content in the course. If you have a question that you want my particular feedback on, go ahead and make a meeting with me. So there's a number of different links throughout the site which tells you how to do that. One of the easiest ways is just shoot me an email and tell me why you want to meet with me. I'm happy to do that. In fact, it's one of my favorite things about being a professor. All right, so the last thing that I want to highlight on our course page here is the weekly topics. So each week we'll have a topic that we focus on and we'll dive into depth and discuss, read, and have lectures about. This first week is going to be our course introduction, but you can see that from here we start diving into the conceptual, methodological information of the course. So I encourage you to click around. Right now there's lots of content that we still need to post, but we're working on that and we will have it up for you relatively shortly. If you want to find out a little bit more about us too, there's this information down here where you can click on our personal links and find out about our individual research. Okay, let me now talk a little bit about the syllabus. The syllabus lays out everything that I'm talking about here in plain language. It talks about our course structure, it talks about the description of the course, the learning outcomes, etc. The one thing that I would point your attention to, and that it's important to be aware of, are the resources that are available to you. So if you're having a technology problem, if you're having a problem with Canvas, if you're having issues accessing content and you want to go through the library, all of these links are noted here. And there's also a couple of notes about the kind of behaviors that we expect of one another. That is, treating one another with respect, using respectful language, paying attention to the preferred pronouns that our classmates may ask or desire. The other kind of practical or procedural element of the syllabus is that it lays out the grading scale. This course uses a 4.0 grading scale, which is standardized across the iSchool. If you want to learn more about it, you can click on the link there, and it will tell you basically how each of your points break down. The important thing that I want to bring up about assignments and grading is that I have a no questions asked late policy. So you can see this in the syllabus, but I'll just reiterate it here. I don't need to know why it is that you need an extension on an assignment. All that I require is that you have given me 48 hours advance notice that you'd like an extension. So I'm doing this in particular because, as I said earlier, I think we're all managing a high amount of stress, a high amount of uncertainty, and the first quarter of your education in a graduate program is really stressful. I get all of that. In fact, I've been there myself. So all that I ask is that you get in touch with me 48 hours in advance, and we'll work out when you might be able to turn in the assignments. I'm very flexible here, so please just be in touch with me when you need that extension. The rest of the syllabus is really straightforward. Again, if you have any questions, these are the perfect type of thing to either post to the Canvas forum or talk to your TAs about. All right, now I'm going to go over the assignments that make up the bulk of your grade in this course and are kind of the most practical things that we do in the course. There are 3 assignments in this course. All of them are related. That is, what we're going to do is pick a research area or a topic that we're interested in, and then we're going to investigate that and build some methodological documentation in 3 different ways. So the first assignment is going to ask you to think about what are some of the background assumptions that you have about a particular topic, why that topic is interesting or relevant to LIS audiences, and what are some questions you want to ask about that topic. So for example, you may be interested in digital literacy, and you may be in particularly interested in digital literacy as it relates to college freshmen. So some of the things that you might talk about in this initial assignment are why this is an important topic for LIS research and what kinds of questions you want to ask about digital literacy. Do you want to know what the digital literacy rate is of University of Washington freshmen? Do you want to know this comparatively, maybe about the University of Washington versus Washington State University? All of these things are the types of things that will give you some space to first propose and then revise over time. So each of the assignments, assignment 1, 2, and 3, has an initial draft. The draft gives you just a completion grade. As long as you follow our instructions, you'll get full credit for this. What we will do, and we being your TAs and I, will provide you some feedback, and then you have the ability to revise and turn in a final draft of each assignment. The revision of the draft, and there's particular instructions for each of the assignments, will require you to think a little bit more in depth about both the topics that we've talked about in the weeks that have gone by since you turned in that draft, but also the feedback that we're giving you and the types of ways your ideas are evolving over time. So for your second assignment, what you're going to do is create a literature review for the topic that you've picked out. This is going to require you to find some resources, to read or interact with the data that are in those resources, and then summarize or bring together the different elements of that literature to argue for why your research topic is important. Part of what we're doing in this second assignment is we're trying to figure out what the body of literature says about something that we're interested in. And we're doing that so that we can be informed by and ask better questions about our topic. All right, so your third assignment will require you to fill out an institutional review board application for working with human subjects. This is kind of the final hurdle that everyone who does human subject research has to get past in order to start a research project. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill out the different parts of this form. I'll bring you through the kind of machinations of how this works as we get closer to that assignment's due date. But essentially what we're going to have at the end of the course is a topic, a set of research questions, the background literature which informs why we ask and why we think those questions are important, and then our application for why we can actually go out and responsibly manage data and analyze and provide results to our peers. A couple of important things to note about the assignments. So each of the assignments, if you click through here, has a fuller explanation. It is mostly recording many of the things that I described here, but also going into a little bit more depth. For some of the assignments, I offer some optional exercises that can get you started in thinking about how to complete the assignments. But there's also a particular set of turn-in criteria that you have to use. So please read each assignment, be careful about the due dates, and be sure that you are meeting each of the criteria for the draft and the final turn-in that we're asking of you. If you have any questions, please, again, feel free to ask. We're not trying to trick you. We're trying to communicate as clearly as possible. Okay, so one other really important thing about the assignments and the topics that we're going to be working on this quarter. You have the ability to work in groups of up to 3. I highly recommend that you take on some partners in order to do these assignments. I think this is a more valuable experience when you have the ability to ask questions of your peers, bounce ideas off of one another, and then come to an agreement about what is important in terms of maybe asking a question or in terms of maybe applying a method. So I'm encouraging you to form groups of 3. The groups will be the same for each of the assignments, and the topic will remain the same for each of the assignments. But I'm not requiring that you work in a group. So if you have a really crazy schedule this quarter, if you have a situation in which you're working in a different time zone and it's going to make it really difficult, you absolutely do not have to work in a group, and you won't be penalized in any way. So you will have a reduced workload, and you will also have a greater interaction with your TAs and me if you choose to work alone. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that some of the feedback that we often get about this class is that it's really frustrating to, in the first few weeks, pick a topic and then have to work on that topic for 10 weeks. Because your ideas evolve, your ways of thinking about the world and about the topics that are important in LIS definitely evolve over this first quarter. But here's my pitch. In each of these assignments, really what we're doing is trying to practice. We're not actually pursuing this research in any way that locks us into, say, claiming we're an expert or maybe using this method the rest of our careers. We're really just trying to walk through the paces so that if we and when we get to the point of needing to launch and design a new research project, we've already done it once. So think of this as your dry rehearsal. You don't need to actually marry the topic, but at the end, you may have a better idea of what the ceremony looks like. Okay, and finally, one of the things that I want to leave you with is a link to our frequently asked questions. So Claire, Wanshan, and I came up with some of these based on questions that we often get teaching this course. So if you don't see something in the syllabus, and you're bashful to ask, go ahead and look here first. If you don't find it, like I said, turn to the Canvas forum or send one of us an email. Okay, so that is the close of our first introduction to the course and our first lecture. So I'm really looking forward to this. This is one of my favorite courses to teach, and I hope you all are as enthusiastic and engaged as I am. I will see you next week in your lecture discussion sections. All right, take care.